you, like me, are always looking for ways to speed up not just your editing, but all aspects of post-production, then you're in the right place. There is an incredible tool that can make you a faster and more efficient video editor, and not only that, it can also help you to get even more joy out of the enigmatic and mystical art of video editing. This is the Monogram Video Console, and Monogram believes in their product so much they've guaranteed it will deliver a better editing experience for you. Now, more on that later, so be sure to watch until the end of the video. Now, today I'm going to show you how the Monogram Video Console creates a better editing experience, and you'll see for yourself how it dramatically improves your speed and efficiency with editing and color grading your videos. Now, Monogram has a few excellent videos on their YouTube channel all about setting up your Monogram console, so I'm not going to get into the details of that process, but I'll link to those videos in the description below, and you can add them to your watch later. All right, we've got a lot to cover, so maybe grab a snack and a tasty little beverage, and let's jump into the edit bay and start chopping some broccoli. All right, so we're in the edit bay taking a closer look at my Monogram Video Console, and I have two profiles set up. The first one we're going to take a look at is my editing profile. The second one we'll take a look at in a little bit, and that's my color correction, color grading profile. So we're going to literally go button by button to show you what it does in Final Cut Pro and how it speeds up my workflow. So let's just get into it. All right, so a really handy tip when you're using your video console, there are no labels on these buttons, and it's going to be difficult at the beginning to memorize what all the different buttons do, especially with the video console because there's so many buttons and dials and knobs. If you press and hold one of the next or previous profile buttons, you'll see an overlay take over your whole screen and show you what all the buttons are, so you can quickly reference that so that you know what button to push. I've been using this less and less as I've gotten to memorize the different buttons and dials on my video console, but it's really handy, especially if you've been away from the edit bay for a couple of days, to just have a refresher. What was that button again? This is great for that. So first up, we've got a scale adjustment. So if we're zoomed in on a clip here and we want to scale this up, all I have to do is rotate this dial left or right. I can scale it down or scale it up. And if I want to reset that adjustment, I can just press the button and it goes back to the 0 value. And then something else I do on occasion with a clip, especially a B-roll clip, if my horizon's off, I'll rotate that clip a little bit, left or right. And then, you know, if your edge shows, like over here, you can see where the edge of the frame is showing, you can scale it up to crop all that out. And then again, if you want to reset everything back to 1, just press that dial and all that rotation is undone. And then something else that I use on occasion when doing some compositing or checking that my second angle in my multicam edit is lined up with the main angle is I'll drop the opacity on a clip just to make sure that I can see through it. So if you take this clip and put it over the top and then drop the opacity, that's just a nice quick way to be able to adjust the opacity on clips. And again, press that button to reset it. Works great. And moving right along to the next set of dials, this is really great for doing some of the audio editing that I do when I'm editing my videos. You can see here already I have these dips here where I have some breaths that are very audible in the video, and Brad over at Brad and Donna had made a macro for a button push that would reduce the breaths by 12 decibels, and it would automatically put in the 4 keyframes that you needed and then adjust that volume down by 12 decibels. So all I have to do to take breaths out is switch to the range tool and then select the area that I want to reduce and then press this button once, and it's down 12 decibels with those 4 keyframes. This has dramatically sped up my post-production process, especially when it comes to taking down breaths, because I really breathe audibly in my videos, and this is a great way to be able to do that very quickly. Now, something else you sometimes need to do is you need to silence a portion of a clip. Let's say there's like a weird pop or a crackle, like this little blip here. If we want to silence it, I press this dial and it drops all the volume down to 0. The other thing it can do is, let's say I want to mute this entire clip. I can select this, push my button, and the entire clip goes to silence. It's a really great way to be able to manage your audio using these dials. Now, something else we have to do in the audio side of things is manage a lot of our crossfades. When we're editing A-roll like this, sometimes these cuts between our A-roll clips can cause little blips and pops in the audio, and we want to smooth that out using Apple's audio crossfade feature. Normally that's an Option T keyboard shortcut to do that, but if you select both clips and push this button, it automatically puts that crossfade on. And you can even select multiple clips. So let's say the remaining clips, I want to put an audio crossfade between all of them. I select all those clips, push this one button, and now I have audio crossfades between all of these clips. The Option T keyboard shortcut isn't terribly inconvenient because it can be done just with your left hand, but it's really nice to have that audio crossfade with just the push of a button. And the last thing on my audio adjustments is volume. If I want to select a clip here and bring it up a few decibels, all I have to do is select it and start cranking up the dBs. And it goes in 1/10 of a decibel increments. It doesn't go 1, 2, 3 decibels. It goes 1.1, 1.2, 1.3. So you can really get some fine adjustments going. And again, you can press the button to reset the adjustment you made if you went too far, too low, whatever the case may be. So this is really great for being able to select a clip and adjust the audio. And you can also do it across multiple clips. Let's say these 3 clips are a little bit lower than the surrounding clips, and I just want to raise that audio up a little bit. I can go ahead and turn the dial, and now my audio is going up in increments of 1/10 of a decibel. Now, something that I've been using more and more with my timeline settings is adjusting the clip height of a clip. As I transition from doing my A-roll cut down, where I have the clips as tall as possible with just the waveforms exposed, I'll tend to get into my main edit where I'm adding in B-roll, and I want to see the thumbnails on the clips. Then if my clip height is too low, I can adjust this dial here and make the clip height go up and down without having to go up into the timeline settings menu. This is really great to be able to quickly adjust your clip height, especially if you start getting a lot of layers on your timeline with sound design and multiple video layers. It's really nice to be able to do that with just the turn of a button without having to go over into that menu. And then another feature that I've been using a lot, especially for my YouTube membership content, is the voiceover feature that's built into Final Cut. All I have to do to bring it up is press this last dial, and you can see the record voiceover menu comes up. You can see my levels reading from my shotgun mic, which is just right here. I can rename the clip, assign it a specific role for voiceover, and then press record to start recording. If I push the button again, the voiceover menu goes bye-bye. So these 3 orbiter wheels, I don't use these as much when I'm editing, but you'll see when I'm color grading how important they are. What I have these programmed for when I'm editing is different jog features. So with this one, I can advance my playhead 1 frame at a time or go backwards 1 frame at a time with this jog wheel. Now this jog wheel does a similar thing, but it adjusts it 10 frames at a time. So if I really want to fly through to zero in on a clip that I'm trying to find, I can use this to scan through my timeline really quickly. I don't use this a ton, admittedly, because I use the trackpad and it's really easy to scroll through my timeline with just a 2-finger swipe on my trackpad, but it is nice to have this in certain situations and I'm getting more used to it every day. And then the last jog wheel lets me scroll the timeline. So if I want to move the timeline without moving the playhead and do a quick scroll, this lets me scroll back and forth in the timeline, especially when I'm zoomed in. If I hit Shift Z and I'm zoomed all the way out, this doesn't do much, it just moves a little bit. But again, when you're zoomed in and you need to scroll back and forth to just check different parts of your timeline, this scroll wheel is really great for that. All right, so another macro that Brad showed me, which I really love, is one that he programmed to extend his clips. So we all know that you can shorten multiple clips to the playhead by hitting Option right bracket, but you can't extend these clips to the playhead using any keyboard shortcut. There is one for individual clips where if you select the edge of that clip and then hit Shift X, it'll extend the clip, but it doesn't work on multiple clips because you can't select multiple edges. So Brad over at Brad and Donna came up with a really awesome macro where you can select the clips, and let's say we want to extend them here. You can push one button and then they extend out to the playhead. And you can see it's a little bit funky when it does that because you saw these clips kind of bounce up. What he did was he programmed it to take each of those clips, use the Control D keyboard shortcut, and then change the duration to like 30 seconds. And then he used the Option right bracket keyboard shortcut to bring it back to the playhead. So we programmed a series of keyboard shortcuts called a macro to make it perform multiple operations with the push of one button. But for those of us who have ever been frustrated with not being able to extend multiple clips at the same time, this macro takes care of that, and it's really helpful when you're editing. Another keyboard shortcut that I use a lot is inserting a gap clip, which is just Option W. Well, to make that a little bit easier, just made it one push of a button and we can drop a gap clip in that way. Just a little bit easier to push that one button than to go ahead and find Option W on the keyboard, which I can mostly do by not looking down at the keyboard. But again, one button push, your gap clips in, you're good to go. Now, something else that I find I do a ton while I'm in the editing pane is I'm turning the effects browser and the inspector on and off while I try to manage the Final Cut Pro user interface. When I need to get to the effects browser, normally I have to hit Command 5 to bring it up and then Command 5 to put it away. Not a terrible keyboard shortcut, especially because it can be done with just my left hand. But it's much easier to push one button, have it pop up, and one button to make it disappear. Same thing for the inspector. I can bring that up and then just increase the UI space that I have so I can have a larger viewer, or my timeline has more clips that are visible. And because I'm going into effects and transitions so frequently, it's just really nice to be able to quickly toggle that on and off. And again, same thing with the inspector, just one button push, the inspector appears, one button push and it disappears. Really quick and easy, and definitely shaves those seconds off every time I'm having an intensive editing session. These two bottom buttons I've programmed with another audio adjustment. Something that I do frequently is, as I'm going through my edit, if I see little bits of audio that are spiking, I might use the range tool, and then I want to increase that by 1 decibel or decrease it by 1 decibel. I use this a lot, and that's why I have it at the bottom buttons here, because it's something that when I'm doing my audio adjustments, I'm using constantly. So that's my overview of the editing profile that I have set up with the video console. Let me know down in the comments which shortcuts really got you excited and inspired to consider using something like the video console. Ever since I started using this, it has really been a game changer for my editing process, and I hope that you'll see that some of the shortcuts that I've programmed and borrowed from Brad over at Brad and Donna have really been incredibly beneficial to my overall workflow and editing experience. Now, all of this could very well be overwhelming if you're here to see what the possibilities are for speeding up your workflow. And it is overwhelming. It's really a huge overhaul of how you typically do things, especially if you're someone who rarely uses keyboard shortcuts. And if you are someone who uses keyboard shortcuts and even customizes them, you might resist using a control surface like this because it might temporarily slow you down. But as someone who has mastered pretty much every Final Cut Pro keyboard shortcut, even if I just use them on occasion during editing, taking those shortcuts that I use over and over again and turning them into the push of a button has been a game changer for all the kinds of video editing I do, especially when I can combine keyboard shortcuts into a macro. And I truly can't imagine not having the Monogram video console in my edit bay. Now, this console is a pricey investment, no question about it, but the return on that investment is, in my opinion, immense. For some of you, because of the price, you're not going to even remotely consider something like this. But for those of you who are intrigued, curious, for those of you who can see the possibilities with a video console like this in your workflow, definitely consider picking one up and adding it to your editing arsenal. All right, let's get back in and take a look at my color grading profile and talk about how this console makes color correction and grading fun instead of painful. All right, so now we're gonna take a look at my color profile with the video console. So all I have to do to access that is hit the button for the next profile, and it switches over to color, and we're ready to go. Again, I can press and hold this button to just get an overview of what all my color settings are. So let's go through this. All right, so let's go up to one of my A-roll clips. And typically I'm going to make these adjustments inside the multicam. So let's go ahead and just make sure that we do that. Now, why do I do it inside the multicam? If I make an adjustment inside the multicam, it applies the adjustment globally throughout my edit. If I do it outside the multicam, then I'm having to copy and paste across all of my clips, and that takes forever. We don't have time for that. You can see that this has been color graded using Film Convert Nitrate, doing some film emulation, and then we have some minor tweaks with color wheels and a color board. So let's say I'm ready to make some adjustments. After editing the base adjustments that I did, I just want to tweak them and dial them in a little bit. Let's go through these dials and show you what they control. First up, we've got exposure. And what's cool about this is because there's a color board adjustment already on my clip, when I rotate this dial, it automatically pulls up the color board in the inspector. So if I need to look at just a visual reference of what I'm doing, I can see it. But this helps just get that exposure dialed in a bit more, right? So the next adjustment, let's say I just feel like this is a little cool and I want to adjust the temperature. Watch over in the inspector. It's going to adjust a color wheel that is already there, pull that up automatically, and I can make this cooler or just a little bit warmer. You can see if I go to the extremes, it goes pretty far. And then I can reset it to 5,000. I'm going to go back and undo this to get it back where it was originally, which was just about 4053. To me, that's a little cool. So let's just warm it up just a touch. And something right there, maybe around 4300 feels good to me. Now I can adjust that color temperature without the slider. I can just do it with the dial. The next adjustment is tint. I use this a lot when I'm trying to dial in my skin tones, but you can see the tint's going to adjust it to green or adjust it to magenta. And then I can push the button to reset it back to 0. But I can just quickly do tint controls left or right if I need to pull out a little bit of green, add in some magenta, or pull out some magenta and add a little bit of green. Now, something I don't use a ton is the saturation, but if I want to adjust the saturation on this clip, I can go ahead and desaturate it down to where it's almost down to black and white, or I can really pump up the saturation here and get my skin tones just spiking like crazy on that red and orange spectrum. But let's just go ahead and get that global saturation boosted a touch so we just get some nice warmth in my skin tones. I think that's looking pretty good right there. And the next adjustment we can do is to hue. I almost never use this, but I want it there just in case I need to use it to adjust my skin tones. So you can see what this does on the dial, just brings up the hue a little bit, and you can push the button to reset it to 0. Next thing up is mix. I don't use this one terribly often as well, but I want to have all of my adjustments, especially in the color wheels pane, the one I use most, available to me if I need them. You can see how this impacts the footage. It looks like right now it's just really warming it up. I'm just going to push the button to reset it and leave it at 1, which is the default setting for that adjustment. Now, pulling back out of the multicam, if I'm in the color profile, but I want to do some quick volume adjustments, which without switching back to the editing profile, I can click on a clip and I've got the volume knob here, able to adjust volume as needed. Another important adjustment is to be able to adjust the clip height. As I'm going through my color grade, I may want to adjust this, make it large or small, depending on how many levels of audio and video I have, or if I'm referencing the waveform or the thumbnail needs to be bigger. Whatever the situation is, I want to always be able to adjust my clip height no matter what profile I'm in. And then because I'm using these orbiters for color grading adjustments, I can't really jog through my timeline. So I programmed this to be able to move my timeline forward 1 frame at a time. And that jog adjustment lets me just move that playhead a little bit without having to move over to my trackpad to make that adjustment. All right, so moving on to the orbiter wheels, we're going to go back into my multicam because we want my adjustments to be applied universally across the entire edit, and whatever adjustments I make in here, I'm able to see applied throughout the edit. So I feel like my highlights are a little hot right now, so I'm going to use this orbiter to bring them down a little bit. You can see that just cuts the highlights a little bit. And then I can use this to adjust the midtones and this to adjust the shadows. Let me just pull back a little bit to show you why this is so great. So we're going to go down to the end of my timeline and we're going to grab a clip from my library that doesn't have any adjustments made to it. So let's just grab this and let's actually get me looking at camera. So we'll grab this piece, we'll put it down here. And then I'm going to apply my custom LUT to it. So we'll just use this custom LUT with C-Log for C-Log on the C300. So all those adjustments are made, but we want to make some additional adjustments. So what's great about these jog wheels and Video Console working with Command Post is I don't have to add a color wheels effect to the clip to start the grading process. Normally you'd have to come over here, choose from the drop-down menu, or if you have color wheels as your default, then start making your adjustments here. With Command Post and Video Console working together, all I have to do is start adjusting the highlights and the color wheels effect is automatically applied. So then I can bring up my midtones a little bit just to get some light on my hat and then tweak that just a little bit, and you can see we're pretty dialed in here. If I want to bring up my scopes, I can switch over to the Luma waveform and you can see how those are adjusted as I go through this clip. So again, highlights, if I want to bring those up, and it looks like I need to bring them down a little bit to be right around 68 IRE. I think right there. And then again, midtones, can lift those a little bit if I want things to be a little bit brighter overall, and then we could really crush the blacks here below 0, but I'm going to try to keep that right around there. But let's bring those midtones down. Now, this obviously is not like a beautifully graded shot. It's just got a LUT on there. I haven't made any color adjustments, looked at pulling some of the blues out of the shadows, stuff like that. This just gives you an idea of how quickly you can adjust highlights, midtones, and shadows on a clip using the video console. You don't have to add the effect in the inspector, then make your adjustments. It just does it automatically when you start manipulating the orbiter wheel, and I love that it does that. And the center buttons on all three orbiters allow you to adjust the color values for highlights, midtones, and shadows. These three adjustments alone have really overhauled my entire experience of the color grading process. Color correction grading is something I do not enjoy at all, mostly because I just have a really hard time getting the tools to make what I see in my mind match up. If I see that things are a little bit blue or a little green, I really struggle with making those adjustments. The other thing I really struggle with is just working up in the inspector. It can just be tricky to grab these sliders, move these like radio buttons, and get everything dialed in the way you want. I really like being able to use these orbiters to be able to do that, and the dials to adjust things like color, temperature, and saturation. And when you're going through a bunch of clips in your edit, especially B-roll, you're going to have all kinds of different exposure, highlights, midtones, and shadows. So one clip might be a little bit brighter in the highlights, so I can bring it down quickly. The next clip might be a little bit low in the highlights, especially if you're doing more run and gun B-roll on a shoot or a vlog. So this has really been crucial to increasing my productivity, efficiency, and just overall happiness with the color grading process. But let's take a look at the last 6 buttons that I have and how it pertains to my color grading workflow. So the next 2 buttons are for paste and remove attributes. Let's say I want to copy something from this clip over to this clip. I can hit this button and now choose which attributes I want to go over. Normally what you have to do to get that is Command-Shift-V, but now I can just do it with the push of a button. And I think that's a little bit easier because Command-Shift-V, even though it's all with the left hand, is a little bit tricky of a keyboard shortcut, not only to memorize because it's 3 button pushes, but to just quickly be able to do without looking down at your keyboard. Now let's say I'm working with a clip and I want to remove attributes. Now I can just select this clip, and instead of hitting Command-Shift-X to do the remove attributes, I can just push one button. And now my remove attributes is pulled up and I can start removing effects. I do that a lot when I'm color grading, especially pasting attributes, and it's just much easier to be able to push one button, pull up that menu, and then start making the adjustments to the effects that are on my clip. Now, similar to my editing pane, I have these 2 buttons pushed for toggling parts of the Final Cut Pro user interface on and off. So this one is again for the effects browser, but instead of the inspector going on and off, I have this button programmed to scopes. And scopes is something that I bring up all the time. Usually I have a 2x2 view, so I'll have these 2 stacked up, and one's the vector scope, and then one is the Luma waveform. So I can toggle that on and off as I'm going through my color grade, and it works really great to be able to pop those scopes on and off if I need to adjust my user interface quickly. All right, so the next thing I use on my video console all the time is being able to move through clips in my timeline so I can be grading with the wheels as I go, doing it all on the fly super fast. So I have these programmed for the keyboard shortcut that is Command right arrow and Command left arrow. All I have to do to move from clip to clip is push this button and off I go. If I want to go back, and this lets me cycle to the next clip while I'm grading. So I can go to this clip, make my adjustments, move to the next clip, make my adjustments, move to the next clip, and make my adjustments. And this works out really great to be able to do that. And what's great about this is it knows what clip is going to be seen on screen. So the reason it's skipping over this clip that's right here is because it's not visible on screen. So it's not the next clip that you can see. So why would you need to make any adjustments or do anything to it? And that's what I love about this. It's only going to the clips that can actually be seen. This has dramatically sped up my color grading workflow when combined with the orbiters and these dials, and I love this console for that reason alone. It's certainly helpful in the editing profile, but the color grading profile is really the game changer here with this video console, and you couldn't take this away from me if you tried. It is going to be a permanent fixture in my edit bay, and I am so grateful that Monogram partnered with me, sent it out to me, and allowed me to spend the last few months really getting to know how it could implement with my workflow and make me a better, faster editor. So thanks Monogram for sending the console and partnering with me on this video. So you can see how incredibly powerful it is to be able to access these tools immediately. And pairing this console with Command Post is a genius move because it means you can work at the speed of thought. You can make these adjustments almost instinctively and stay in the creative flow, something I talk about all the time. You're not not up in the inspector looking around with your cursor trying to find the slider or the wheel that you need to make a quick adjustment. You can just immediately reach up to your console and fly through your corrections and grades. And again, Monogram believes so much in this product that they've stamped it with the better editing guarantee. In their words, we understand that everyone's workflow is different, and even the most adaptable tool ever may not always fit. That's why you can try Monogram Creative Console in your own workflow for 30 days. If it doesn't improve your editing experience, you can return it for a full refund. Now, if you do purchase a console, you have the choice of setting up your own custom profiles from scratch or downloading existing users' profiles and installing them on your video console. This is a great option if you see another YouTuber who has a setup that you really like. You can adapt their setup to yours and be up and running in no time. Now, my journey with Monogram's video console is really just beginning. With the ability to set up multiple profiles and easily switch between them, I can continue to come up with ways to speed up my workflow with custom profiles for, say, logging footage or doing sound effects editing. This is a powerful tool that has made a dramatic impact on my post-production workflow, and I'm looking forward to future edit sessions with this valuable tool. If you're interested in adding a Monogram video console to your editing workflow, I've got a link in the description below that gets you $80 off your purchase. Of course, I want to thank Monogram for sponsoring this video and supporting creators like me. And if you liked this video, then you'll love this one I made about how to start your edits faster and keep them organized using my Finder and Final Cut Pro library templates. Thanks for watching, everyone. Until the next one, I'll see you all soon. And remember, keep chopping that broccoli.